Kentucky Senator Rand Paul sits on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and is the chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, and he joins me now. I know, Senator, that you have concerns about President Trump going to war in Venezuela, or at the very least, mounting some sort of an invasion. Do you think that that is in the cards?
You know, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I kind of like to obey this thing called the Constitution. The Constitution says that war only occurs when it's declared by Congress. The president doesn't have the power to take the country to war. Now, if he does, he wouldn't be the first president to disobey the Constitution. But I think we should obey the Constitution because I think it makes war less likely.
Now, you just heard Rand Paul there saying that he doesn't believe that President Trump should go into Venezuela. Now, that clip that you saw was from December the 9th. So it was prior to this. It was when Trump was trying to negotiate with Maduro, saying, hey, let's talk, man. You need to just leave before something bad happens. Maduro didn't listen. We know what happened. But the purpose of this video is Rand Paul started it off talking about how we shouldn't go and we should listen to the Constitution. And President Trump needed approval from Congress. But here's the kicker. When Obama went and got bin Laden, he didn't go to Congress for that. And it was in another sovereign country. Nobody said a word. They all cheered. Now, Rand Paul mysteriously has an issue with what's going on in Venezuela. He came out against the drug boats. He's against what happened with going and getting Maduro. And as you saw in that video clip, even prior to what the president did, he was saying, no, he wanted Congress to be involved. The president should get approval, and that if we did it, it would lead to war. Why? Because Rand Paul, turns out, is a puppet for the Maduro regime. A list came out because, in case you didn't know, we have in U.S. custody Maduro's former spy chief. He was his right-hand man for 13 years, sat in the secret meetings, knew where the bodies were buried. And while he was here serving his 21-year sentence, he decided that he was going to cooperate with the United States government. As a matter of fact, he tried to share this information with the Biden administration. And guess what? He was shot down. As a matter of fact, he was told that he doesn't bring up this type of stuff. This is all about his drug offenses. And that if he spoke about the 2020 election, what was going on with the voting machines, he could have some problems, allegedly. Well, he decided to drop a list, as he promised the president, because the first time this man was interviewed was in July of 2025. But yet he's been in U.S. custody. Nobody from the Biden DEA or FBI cared about any information he had exposing Maduro and how China, Iran, Russia, and Venezuela were all colluding against the United States of America, allegedly. Now, this list that we got is, as you see right here, this says Rand Paul warns Trump war in Venezuela will fracture the MAGA movement. Well, let's see how real or how correct Rand Paul was, because I'm going to expose to you the evidence, what's going on. Wait till you hear about what Rand Paul has been involved with Maduro, which explains why he has been such a rhino. He has been one of the biggest thorns. He and Thomas Massie has tried to ruin every single thing the Republicans and President Trump has tried to do. Well, now we know why. Is because he's a puppet and has been getting paid, and they probably have something on him where if he doesn't play ball, they're going to expose him. But he felt like if President Trump, remember that clip was from December the 9th, he felt that if President Trump went into Venezuela, the MAGA movement would fracture and that he should get congressional approval. And you and I both know what would have happened. He would have went, they would have told Congress, and mysteriously Maduro would have found out, would have been gone, and we might have never caught him like that because he would have been more on guard. So, and the fact was, this was not a land invasion. This was not war, an asset which did not require congressional approval, says the Speaker of the House, John Thune, the Speaker of the Senate, Majority Leader in the Senate, John Thune, and Majority Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Now, CNN was forced to do an update and give a report on President Trump's support after capturing Maduro, since that's what Rand Paul was so concerned about. And after this, we're going to get into some of the evidence on Rand Paul. Check this out.
Okay, U.S. military ousting Maduro. Pre-ousting, what you saw was the clear plurality of Americans opposed at 47%, just 21% support. Come over to this side of the screen. After the ousting, look at that. The support through the roof. Now we're talking about 37%, well within the margin of error right here of the opposition, 38%. It turns out Americans like what they deem to be successful foreign policy operations. And in this case, they view the ousting of Maduro, at least up to this point, as a successful one, and therefore the support way up.
Yeah, before underwater, now basically even. What about the idea of putting Maduro on trial here in the United States?
Yeah, you know, part of the reason why I think that the success number is way up, and you saw it here, what was it? It was 26 points in favor of opposition, now within the margin of error, is because they simply put, don't like Nicolas Maduro. And in fact, they believe that he should be on trial for drug trafficking. Look at this. 50% of Americans favor compared to just 14% who oppose. So there are very few Americans here who oppose it. Even among Democrats, the opposition number is below, get this, just 24%, is below 25%. So this is something that unites Republicans. It divides Democrats. And at this particular point, support for the operation way up. And in terms of those who favor the drug trafficking trial for Maduro, that is a clear plurality.
Yeah, it doesn't really even divide Democrats on the idea of a trial. They all seem to support it by and large. Only 24% oppose it for Democrats. Let's talk about sort of what the...
So as you see, regardless of what Rand Paul says, President Trump's support has increased, going from 21 to 37. That's a 16-point swing. And the opposition has decreased, even amongst the Democrats, because this is where, again, this year, I'll say it over and over again, will be a complete mask-off reveal for the American people finally to realize who it is that they've been supporting on that Democrat Party. You got those coming out literally demanding free Maduro. I saw white liberals chastising and going off on Venezuelans that were celebrating, people that were here on asylum. We're not talking about American Venezuelans that were born here and raised up. People from Venezuela that had only been here for a few years, couple years, were dancing in the streets of New York, and white liberals were going off on them saying, how can you do this? You're telling them that they were terrible for celebrating a vicious, socialist, murderous dictator. If you're enjoying this video, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, because I will never ask you for a cash out, super chat, or a donation. But you hitting that like button, it does help get the video out there. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, you should subscribe. And whether you're subscribed already or just subscribing now, make sure you hit the notification bell and select all, because YouTube has issues getting the notifications out. But when you select all, YouTube will make sure that you get notified when I upload new videos that they were happy to see removed.
Do you notice there's not a single Venezuelan here? Have you noticed that? I'm the closest thing to a Venezuelan here, and I support Donald Trump's actions. Not a single Venezuelan here. Not a single one. It's all a bunch of 90% white liberals here. They think they know better than Venezuelans. And if you look at any video online, you see Venezuelans celebrating across the country, across the world. Donald Trump is a hero to the Venezuelans. He freed them from a dictator. He freed them from all the human rights abuses. He freed them from a stolen election. He freed them from violence in the streets. He freed them from needing an ID code to get a roll of toilet paper. And they're all against that. Where are the Venezuelans here? Not a single one. Because they're all celebrating what Trump did today. All the Venezuelans are celebrating what Trump did today. And I think that their lived experience means a lot more.
But that's how radical they are. If you're not in alignment with what they believe, they feel like they can chastise the people who were actually persecuted while they sit here and attend their Ivy League schools and sip their cafe lattes. They're going to tell a persecuted Venezuelan what's right and what's wrong about the capture of Maduro. And that's crazy. Now, here's the list. The list of names. It was actually better vision when I had it the other way. Let me do this so you can see it. Okay, looks like Rand Paul is on the list of politicians that were bribed by Maduro. So I'll read this. It says, live in shame for their treason. Doesn't show the first part. Below is every U.S. senator on the Venezuelan list. So we got Lisa Murkowski. Shocker, huh? She also has been one that's a rhino that needs to be removed. I'm only looking at the Republicans. We already know Mark Kelly's name, second from the top. Mark Kelly, that's the senator that was a part of the Seditious Six, who was just demoted, had his retirement pay cut, and has been censured as they going into further proceedings where he may be sent back to active duty or court-martial. So the hammer's already dropped on him, and he was shocked yesterday when it happened. Now, as far as Rand Paul, here he is right here. Mitch McConnell, shocker there. Guess what state Mitch McConnell represents? You guessed it, Kentucky, the same state as Rand Paul. Bill Cassidy from Louisiana. And you know, one that did shock me, as far as on the Republican side, was Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley is like a Republican Senate statesman, but it also kind of makes me realize something too, because Grassley has been silent on this whole Maduro thing. And you realize that we got some rhinos that appear like they're down with the cause, but in reality, they're working for a socialist. So Rand Paul, that shows, and Susan Collins, as you can see her name right here, Susan Collins, again, shocker. So we got the usual suspects. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Bill Cassidy. The usual suspects, the usual rhinos. Chuck Grassley is the only one that was a shocker. Deb Fisher, regular. Robert Wicker, I'm not familiar with him. But look at all of these D's. And James Lankford from Oklahoma. Now, James Lankford is the one Republican, the one. It was James Lankford and Mitch McConnell, where Mitch McConnell didn't participate in the writing, but Mitch McConnell selected James Lankford to help Democrats write that border bill that Trump heavily influenced the Republican Party to reject, which would have legalized 5,000 immigrants a day, maxing out at 7,500 a day upon the president's approval. On the heels of all of the stuff that's taking place in the country right now, seniors, it's extremely important that you make sure you've got the best Medicare plan available, because this year, Medicare plans are expected to increase 10%. And that's $215 out of your Social Security check. And guess what? Some of your doctors may not be in network. Some of your prescriptions may no longer be covered. And that would suck for you to be going to visit your doctor to find out they're not in network, or for you to need a prescription to find out it's no longer covered. Why take the risk? With Chapter, you can reach out to Chapter, and a free phone call can last as short as only 20 minutes and speak to one of the highly skilled, unbiased professionals that will help you make sure you got the best Medicare plan available. If you've got the best, great. But if not, they can make sure you've got what you need. So use that number there on the screen, or visit the website at askchapter.org/realpolitics and let Chapter make sure you've got everything you need. So we would have legalized the illegal immigration, and James Lankford, who was pushing for the Republicans to take it like, hey, it's the best deal we're going to get. It's the best deal we're going to get. It was terrible. And people were pissed off at him, and he may be primary because they were so pissed off. His state of Oklahoma, they censured him in Oklahoma for that bill. Too bad our House and our Senate in Washington didn't do the same. So we got James Lankford, the author of that horrible, what they call bipartisan, even though there was only one Republican that helped write it amongst a team of Democrats, Rand Paul, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Mitch McConnell. Now, we got that. Now, Rand Paul, has always portrayed himself as he's this like super duper guy that's all about what's right and the libertarian views and the Constitution. Well, he's got some skeletons in his closet, because I pulled this up where the federal government says Rand and Ron Paul aides plan to smear a local politician if he did not accept a bribe for them. The dirty politics case that has snared top advisors to Rand Paul gets dirty. I'm only going to read a little bit of it. Then I'm going to get into the Rand Paul Maduro clip. This says, and let me enlarge this some so you can see it. So this says, since last week's indictments of 3 top political aides to Ron and Rand Paul, new details have emerged about the Ron Paul campaign scheme in 2012 to buy the endorsement of Kent Sorensen, who was then an influential Republican state senator in Iowa. In the latest court filing, federal prosecutors assert that the Paul aides plan to smear Sorensen if he refused to accept a bribe. This case will likely continue to dog presidential candidate Rand Paul, who has at times employed all 3 men. 2 of the 3 aides, Jesse Benton, who is married to Rand Paul's niece, and John Tate, were running the main super PAC reporting Rand Paul's presidential campaign. Following the indictments, each of them took leave of absence from the super PAC. So Rand Paul has also been accused by the feds of trying to bribe a politician for his vote and threatening to ruin this individual if he did not go forward with it. So now let's listen to Christina Aguayo as she exposes Rand Paul. Check this out.
I'm Christina Aguayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. Senator Rand Paul has been implicated as one of the politicians who has been taking millions of dollars from the Maduro regime, according to a high-ranking government source. The Kentucky senator was named as a central figure on a reported Venezuela list of U.S. politicians allegedly receiving multi-million-dollar payments from Maduro's regime and narco-trafficking networks, according to that high-ranking Venezuelan government defector. The source alleges that Paul has accepted bribes in exchange for political actions meant to undermine President Trump's military and diplomatic campaign against the Maduro government, including...
Doesn't this make sense? Doesn't it make sense how you see Rand Paul, who has been on the wrong side of all of the right decisions being made by the MAGA movement, the MAGA Republicans, and President Trump? Now we know why, which makes everything that he says so disingenuous. And you know, if he's getting down, what about Thomas Massie? The 3-headed monster, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, and Thomas Massie out of Kentucky, where Thomas Massie right now is facing a primary by a Trump-backed opponent. And Rand Paul has vowed to help Thomas Massie defeat this individual. Nothing would be better for the state of Kentucky than to get Mitch McConnell's retired, than to get Rand Paul and Thomas Massie out of there. Because what have they really done for their state but blow hot air and talk noise and make things harder for the American people by siding with Democrats? But now we know why. Rand Paul is a rhino and a low-key socialist who's being puppeteer, who has a puppet master and a socialist murderous dictator. This is insane to hear this.
Including his recent efforts to block funding while claiming that Trump is committing quote-unquote war crimes in the Caribbean. The Venezuelan source says Paul received seven-figure payments funneled through intermediaries tied to the Cartel de los Soles, which is the Venezuelan military-led drug trafficking organization indicted by the DOJ in 2020. These payments allegedly started years ago and intensified as Trump's second administration launched aggressive operations this year, including deadly strikes on drug smuggling vessels. Paul has publicly opposed the operations, particularly in his December 3rd sponsorship of a war powers resolution. He has repeatedly accused Secretary Pete Hegseth of authorizing potential war crimes. The source described Paul's moves as a deliberate effort to protect Maduro-linked trafficking routes that pour drugs into the U.S. Drug overdoses in the United States are more than 120,000 in the most recent 12-month period, with Venezuelan transit routes identified by the DEA as a primary way that fentanyl enters the United States via Mexico. That's what you need to know.
And see, the Democrats keep using the loophole of, well, they don't even make fentanyl in Venezuela. Yeah, they've opened it up so that China and anyone else can come through their way to send it here. Why is that so hard for the Democrats to realize? They're acting so ignorant on this. Oh, there's not anything made. Venezuela has, I saw Senator Murphy say Venezuela makes cocaine and 90% of that doesn't come here. So you're okay with the 10% that does, Senator? And that 10% on a grand scale of what's coming out of Venezuela is harming American people. And if China is using Venezuela to get the fentanyl in here, great thing. And also, folks, please know, this was not about oil. Well, it is about oil, but not in the sense that you would think. The United States does not need Venezuela's oil. Matter of fact, we pump the most oil out of anybody in the world. We're over Saudi Arabia in our oil production. That's not the issue. But the issue is that China got their oil from Venezuela. So by us controlling Venezuela's oil, we choke off China. And if China doesn't have a way to get the oil to be able to create fuel to help them be able to invade Taiwan, same thing with Russia. Russia was getting their oil through Venezuela. So in Iran, same thing. So by taking over, and this is in the Western Hemisphere, which is the United States is in the West. So why are we allowing Eastern adversaries to play in our backyard? We wouldn't be able to go over there in Russia's backyard and do that. They've made that known. Same thing with China. But the Democrats, who are socialists, who are globalists, who will defend dictators, even though they love to say how Trump cozies up to dictators, when in reality, they're the ones who love dictators. They said Trump worked with Putin when it was Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation that were working with Putin, and Obama creating the Russia hoax, the Steele dossier. Now we find out that it's Democrats that are colluding with Maduro and the Republican rhinos that we got. So remember, whatever the Democrats accuse somebody of, 9 times out of 10 is exactly what they're doing. Think about it. When they say, oh, all of the violence comes from the right, it's because all of the actual violence is coming from the left. And we can see it. Jasmine Ignorant Crotchet, jumped up there saying, I haven't seen anybody on the left commit violence, but I've seen the Proud Boys and blah, blah, blah. What are you talking about? We've seen transgender mass unalivers for the last 3 years. And every time one of these people gets taken out or take themselves out, their manifestos mysteriously come up missing. But check this clip out. This individual brings it home with the hypocrisy of a Schumer. And the reason why I'm saying that 3 times is because what you're about to see is so insane. These old school dinosaurs don't realize this ain't the 80s. This ain't the 90s. This is not even the early 2000s. We can see you. We have a historical record of your stance on these issues. Check this out.
Did this guy not know that he was being recorded? Listen to what he said about President Donald Trump and Nicolas Maduro in 2020.
He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
Fast forward 6 years to right now, the Maduro regime is done thanks to President Donald Trump. And here's what this guy said today.
We have the War Powers Act. That's a privilege resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week. And if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela without the okay of Congress. We have to pass.
How do these Democrats do it? It must be exhausting keeping up with your own hypocrisy.
I agree. I've said it before. I don't know how these folks can get up one day and say something to a camera, and the very next day, because of who else is supporting it, will flat out lie to the people and not bat an eye. My wife always tells me it's this thing she calls them lion lips. It's when a person's lips, like, they make this weird formation where they have this really kind of dent in the middle and they sync up and they're kind of thin and wiry. She calls lion lips. And I've been looking at some of these Democrat politicians. They have lion lips. They have the dent. They're kind of thin and kind of smeared across. But that's what she calls it. I'm being funny right there. But when I started paying attention, I started saying, man, that's how I look at people now. Like, yep, got them lion lips. Can't trust them. Got to watch what they about to say. But I wanted to bring you this to let you in on the fact that that rhino, that thorn that's been in our president's hip or in his side, there's a reason behind it. There's a method to the madness, and that is that he's a rhino. He's a Maduro puppet who allegedly has been taking millions in from that murderous regime. So he doesn't give a crap about Americans. He doesn't give a crap about Venezuelans. He's helping facilitate the punishment and the pain that those people were going through. And shame on him. And I know President Trump cannot wait to try to be able to expose Rand Paul and drop the hammer on him. And they know by him being the senator, they're getting everything lined up. And so we may see Rand Paul start speaking out, pushing back even louder now, but he'll just expose himself even more. Because as you saw in that CNN clip, the American people are standing with the president, Democrats and Republicans on this. So we got Israel and Gaza was down. Now we went and got Maduro, the Democrats, and the voters are watching the Democrats protesting, demanding his freedom, which is helping them see like, oh my God, they really are socialists. Trump wasn't lying. This isn't a facade. These folks are nuts. Even if they hate Trump's guts, they'd rather have a Trump in office than supporting a Maduro any day. And as you heard CNN say, the Democrats are divided, which makes this excellent heading into the midterms. The president, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, that administration, they play 5D chess, and they make the Democrats run around like chickens with their heads cut off, and I'm here for it. So if you've hung out with me up to this point, I really appreciate you. I want to thank you from the top and bottom of my heart. If you haven't already, leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think about us exposing Rand Paul. And if you haven't already, hit that like button. And if you aren't subscribed already, subscribe. Most importantly, I want you to stay safe and you be great. I'm Brian Maxwell saying I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.